Well, what happens when two podcasters get together? Well, with a guest like Frank Santopadre, Gilbert Gottfried's former Amazing Colossal co-host, and now the voice of Fun for All Ages, you get 90 minutes of fun talk. And that's next on Brio TV, the podcast. Hey there, thanks for joining me. I'm your host, Bill Brio. Between 2014 and 2022, my guest recorded over 600 episodes of a podcast that is required listening if you're a fan of comedy, film, TV, movies, music, stars. It's a true treasure trove of 20th and 21st century showbiz and entertainment. If you know Gilbert Gottfried's Amazing Colossal podcast, you know. If you haven't discovered it yet, you have a great treat in store. Gilbert used to do a 90-minute introduction that was hilarious, but I don't want to even try. So let's cut directly to my live introduction of his perfect podcast partner, the George Fenneman to his Groucho, Frank Santopadre. We're speaking this morning with Frank Santopadre. Frank, of course, has a great new podcast, Fun for All Ages, which looks at everything pop culture, everything we grew up with, basically. Certainly, it's a touchstone for me. But is also well known, of course, for many other reasons. Is a professional television producer for The View, has won an Emmy, and he's written for just about a who's who, Bill Murray to you name it, and had the great podcast, Gilbert Gottfried's Amazing Colossal podcast, which I enjoyed for years, and boy, made the trips anywhere go by like nothing. It just really, honestly, Frank, I have a cottage up north. It's a 2-hour drive, and I listened to maybe 200 of your podcasts on that trek. So thank you so much for that.
Only 200, Bill?
Well, listen, 600's a lot.
We did 600 and change. I keep losing track of how many there were.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that, and thank you for listening to that many.
Well, it was a pleasure, and I've got more to look forward to. Certainly, we all mourn the passing of Gilbert Gottfried about 4 years ago now, Frank, is that right?
He passed in April of 22. I miss him every day.
You must. His infectious laugh, I mean, obviously one of a kind. And then when you did Fun for All Ages, you had the Gilbot. You had a fellow who sounds, frighteningly similar to Gilbert Gottfried, and not just in voice, but in tone and thought.
Yeah. That's a voice actor, a talented voice actor who's a friend of the show. The new show and the old show. His name is Barrett Leddy, Leddy.
Thank you for that. Will he be back?
Yeah, I mean, that was with Dara's okay, because it's a little strange. You have to get the family's sign off before you bring on. He's always done this impression. In fact, Gilbert knew the impression. He did it for Gilbert years ago. We did a live show. He was in the audience for that. And I talked to Dara about it, Gilbert's widow, and I just said, why don't you come on the first show of the first episode of the new show, and we'll do a passing of the torch from the old show to the new show, which I thought was actually my producer Andrew Capone came up with that idea. I can't take credit. We thought that would sit very well with the fans.
Yeah, it was a lovely idea.
Thank you. And then I thought about it. I thought, well, there's no fun in just introducing an impersonator and saying, "Hi, here's Barrett, and now he's going to do Gilbert for you." And I was in the shower at this brainstorm of this idea of the Gil bot, since we're living in the AI age. And then obviously the pun was good.
Yeah, sure was.
And I called Barrett and I said, "How would you like to pretend to be an AI? And we'll see how many people we can fool." And to our delight, we fooled many. Yeah,
it was amazing.
He was responding in real time with real punchlines and real answers to questions. And a lot of listeners thought, okay, has AI advanced to that degree? We're all in trouble. But it wasn't. It just turned out it was a guy.
It wasn't just the voice. It had the same twisted, semi-dirty.
Oh, yeah. He's got the cadence. He's got the timing. He's got And those jokes that he came up with are his. I mean, in the moment. I mean, it wasn't scripted.
No, it was impressive.
He's not only a great mimic, but he's a very funny comic, and he's a funny writer, and he was just coming up with this stuff off the top of his head, and that helped make that first episode extra special. But it's spice. It's a real strong spice for the soup, Bill. So I don't want to bring it back every week.
I think you're wise. No, this way every 10 weeks. I think
every 10 or 12 he'll show up. We'll wheel in the Gilbot and plug it in. Caroline's Comedy Club in New York had two locations. One was it's gone now. Well, all of them are gone now, sadly. Yeah. One of them was here in Manhattan at the South Street Seaport. And in those days, Gilbert had the energy to do a 2-hour show. You would get all of the greatest hits. It was like a Springsteen concert. And I approached him at the bar after the show. And, we shared all the same strange cultural references. I just wanted to talk about Lon Chaney Jr. and Norman Fell. Yeah. And people like that with him. And we kind of clicked. But he was... Gilbert was one of those people who, how do I say this? I said it at his eulogy, actually. I met him 10 or 12 times, worked with him, dined with him, and he didn't know who I was. Every time that gag on The Simpsons where every time that Homer meets Mr. Burns, he has no idea who Homer Simpson is.
Yes.
Even though Bart has donated, but,
Even in listening to your show, you have to listen to about 20 episodes before he seems to get your name right.
Yes, I was Frank Santopadre for the first, and he would piece it together like phonetically. Yeah. And listen, at that point when we launched the show in 2014.
Wow.
Was it 2014? Yeah. I already knew him for a decade and a half. I'd written on a show. I misspoke before and said Caroline's Comedy Hour was a stand-up show that I worked for on the A&E network here in New York.
Wow.
And he was on that show. We put him on that show. He in a parody of Indecent Proposal, the Robert Redford movie.
Right.
We put him in a tux, and he played the millionaire who was going to sleep with the host's wife.
Nice.
For $1 million.
In Gilbert's case, was it for $1? I mean,
it could have been for. He would have done it for craft services. He would have done it for a bowl of French onion soup. But I had worked with him. I had worked with him on a couple of cartoons. I'd been to parties with him. I was at his book signing.
Wow.
I wrote for a show called The Joy Behar Show, which was a talk show on CNN's spinoff network, HLN, Headline News. Mm-hmm. And we did a talk show there for a couple of seasons. And he was our Tony Randall. He was our emergency fill-in guest.
Perfect.
When the guest would fall out and you had a slot and you had 15 minutes to fill, call Gilbert. He was across town. And like I said, he'd come for a sandwich. So he'd show up if you fed him. And so I worked with Gilbert on that show probably 10 times. And then I got to know Dara. And that is actually, my relationship with Dara is actually what opened the door to doing the podcast with him. But it became a long-running joke after a while because we also had an adventure in Los Angeles. I was driving down, I've told this story many times. I was driving down Ventura Boulevard in Los Angeles in 1997 or so. And I saw him early in the morning, and I saw him in my rearview mirror wandering down Ventura Boulevard.
Really?
And nobody walks in L.A. as the song says.
Yeah.
And I did a U-turn, and I rolled down the window, and I was on my way to an autograph show, to a celebrity autograph show. And I thought, this is up his alley. So I said, Gilbert, I'm going to the Beverly Garland Hotel.
Oh my God! Yeah, I've been there. It's amazing. Yes.
Yeah, they used to. I don't know that they still do that, or if that hotel even exists.
I don't think it exists anymore. But I was there in '97 at the Beverly Garland at that show, and I still use those interviews. I went up and down the tables. I talked to Bob Ney from the Lost in Space.
Sure.
All that stuff. And my God, what a gathering that was. It was incredible. But I'm sorry.
You know exactly what I'm speaking about.
Yeah.
I think this one was 96. I'm sorry we missed each other.
Yeah.
But Adam West was there, and Howard Morris, Ernest T. Bass from the Andy Griffith Show was there, and Don Knotts himself was there. and Norman Fell was there, and it was Gilbert's dream. It was like a fever dream for him. So he approached the car very tentatively when I pulled up along the sidewalk. And I said, Gilbert, it's Frank Santopadre from Caroline's Comedy Hour. And I named 3 or 4 or 5 other things we had done together. And he approached the car very tentatively, as if I was the kidnapper. The minute I said, Norman Fell and Pat Harrington, he was in the car. And long story short, I drove him to the convention at the Beverly Garland. We spent the entire day there.
Yeah.
And
easy to do.
Yeah, it was easy to do. And he made the rounds, and I've told the story on the old podcast. He met Adriana Castellotti, who was the voice of Snow White.
Wow.
In 1940, 39, 40.
37.
And 37. Look at you. Hey, Bill. Nice work. I'm going to call you for fact checking for the new show. So we had this whole grand adventure. We spent an entire day together. And the funny part of that is, if I saw him maybe a couple of months later, no idea. I didn't register at all. I say, Gilbert, you remember me? Come on, he'd say, I remember you. You're the guy in the blue plaid shirt.
Wow.
So at his eulogy, at his service, I told all of this story. I told how over the decades I had to constantly reintroduce myself.
Well, let me tell you, if I may, my one Gilbert Gottfried story. I met him actually. I ran into him at Just for Laughs in Montreal, maybe 10 years ago, and told him this story because it was. I just sort of was walking along and he happened to be there. But back many, many, many years ago, there was a comedy show in Toronto. It was so long ago, Henny Youngman was part of the bill.
Wow.
And Gilbert was there, and they had all these comedians. I'm there with a few, press and other people, and Joe Piscopo gets up to do his bit. And Joe says, everywhere I go, people ask me to do my Frank Sinatra impression. And he puts a jacket over his shoulder, and he puts the fedora down, and he starts singing Strangers in the Night.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, the next up is Gilbert Gottfried. And forgive me, I'm going to attempt a bit of an impression of Gilbert here.
Okay, I'll brace myself.
So he stands up and he goes, everywhere I go, people ask to hear my Frank Sinatra impression. And he just destroys the room. He does everything that Piscopo just did.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Literally, we were on the floor in tears.
That's wonderful.
It was just incredible.
I never heard that story. That's a great story.
When you grew up in the New York area, Frank?
I grew up in Queens, New York, in a town called Ozone Park, which was all mobbed up in those days. It maybe still is. I don't know. And then we moved to a sleepy little burg in Nassau County in the suburbs here, a town called Roslyn, which is a Revolutionary War town. I had a very lovely childhood growing up in New York, and it's kind of why I was a fish out of water when you put me anywhere else. I spent 10 years in L.A., but I was, as Martin Scorsese would say, I was asked to leave. I'm such a New York kid that I really couldn't cut it anywhere else. I was too homesick.
It was interesting to watch. Sorry to interrupt you.
Not at all.
The Billy Joel documentary. I don't know if you've seen it.
I watched part 1. I'm waiting to watch part 2. Yes,
but he makes the same point. Like, he was starting his career in L.A. And it just wasn't working. He was too New York. He had to get back there to make music.
When he was Bill Martin, when he was playing in the piano bar. Yeah. There's something about I'm full of cliches today, but there's something about this city. I had some misadventures in Los Angeles. One I just explained to you with Gilbert at the Beverly Garland. I had some great times. I got to write. I wrote for cartoons for Warner Brothers, and I got to. I had the chance to, thanks to a producer named Tom Minton. A little bit of trivia: who is the model for the Brain in Pinky and the Brain.
Oh, that's hilarious.
But he became a friend and threw some work my way, and I wrote a bunch of cartoons for Warner Brothers, and I got to attend the scoring session, which is a treat because you go in and you see the cartoon that you wrote projected on a screen, and you watch an 18 or 20 piece orchestra put the cartoon together. Wow. That was a thrill. And I wrote a terrible sitcom, and I had a couple of movie scripts optioned, and I had a lot of adventures there.
Back with more from Fun for All Ages podcast host Frank Santopadre after this short break. Attention, Marx Brother fans. Here's a dream come true, a chance to see A Night at the Opera on a big screen in a packed theater. It's coming up on Sunday, September 21st. It's going to be the Westdale Theater in Hamilton. They're celebrating their 90th anniversary, and they're going to go back to 1935 and show a film they actually showed there, A Night at the Opera. See it now in a fully restored print with some shorts, a newsreel, a couple of cartoons, a live-action short with Laurel and Hardy. I'll be there. I'll be providing the shorts in 16 millimeter. See the Marx Brothers Sunday, September 21st, 7 p.m. You don't even have to say the Sacred Void. For more information, go to thewestdale.ca. What's new on Super Channel? Well, for one thing, the all-Canadian streaming service has the award-winning new documentary Happy Clothes, a film about Patricia Field, designer to the stars. Her frocks have tarted up everything from Sex in the City to Emily in Paris. What else? Well, there's always plenty of choice on Super Channel, and don't just take my word for it. See and hear for yourself.
The one thing that you're going to have to remember is to protect your quarterback, me.
What do you think about being a soldier and a father?
I hope that being good at the one makes me better at the other.
There's a strict hierarchy in ancient Egypt, and the pharaoh is at the top.
And therefore they have divine authority.
They were totalitarian.
Can I help you?
Word on the street is you need a sous chef.
No offense, you don't look like a sous chef.
And what does a sous chef look like?
Well, for starters, they never have a manicure.
I'm building something. The Lightwave Surf Company.
We'd be selling an idea of paradise.
And we're back with my guest, Frank Santopadre. Frank, I just wanted to ask, did you know Maurice LaMarche, who was the voice?
I've never met Maurice. I'm a fan of Maurice's, and we have mutual friends.
Yeah, he's a Toronto guy originally.
Yeah, I know. I'm friends with Rob Paulson, who was Pinky.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And
sorry.
I should get Maurice. I know Maurice does the wonderful Orson Welles.
Right.
I should get Maurice on the next podcast. I'll do a voice actor show at some point, and we'll reach out to.
It's a great idea. Yeah.
Maurice.
Yeah.
But I missed New York. You know, I did my best to fit in out there, and I got some work, and I did some cool things. I wrote for Donnie and Marie Osmond for a while. They had a talk show.
Wow.
I had a lot of strange stops and starts. When I came back to New York and started all over again, you know, things picked up. So I don't regret the move there, and I don't regret the move back.
How old were you when you were writing Bazooka Joe comics?
I was just out of college. That was my first professional humor writing job, I think.
I read that credit and I thought, my God, that's like a monument to 50th, 20th century comedy. Like, we all went through Bazooka Joe comics. And who was the guy with the pullover over his face? It was Bazooka Joe, I guess.
Oh, God. Now I'm trying to remember the difference between Joe. There's Joe and there's Mort. I think Mort is the little guy who kind of looks like Elmer Fudd.
What?
And there's Bazooka Joe is the one with the eye patch.
Right.
Baseball cap. And who's the one with the turtleneck? God, isn't this shameful? Of course, I haven't read one in 30 years.
No, I don't know if they still do it, but give me your favorite Bazooka
Your
Joe.
listeners are screaming into their
they
devices.
Are. Well, hopefully we'll get somebody to.
Oh gosh,
pass that on.
I can't remember. You know, I went to when I left high school. I was going to be an illustrator. My dad was an artist. There was no. I didn't really have any comedy. Any designs on any kind of career in comedy. Although I grew up as a credit reader, I love this stuff. I knew who comedy writers were. I grew up on Mad Magazine, got to write for it eventually, which was another thrill. But wow. I didn't have any. I went to the School of Visual Arts, which is an art school here in Manhattan, on the East Side, and I was studying to be an illustrator, and I fell in with this interesting group of people, and one of them was a guy named Mark Newgarden, who was a New York cartoonist, who was one of the creators of Garbage Pail Kids.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And we were in this little mafia of people. Drew Friedman.
Oh, my God.
The great illustrator.
The great illustrator. Good guest, too, you've had on.
Good guest. One of the funniest guys, one of my best friends, was in that group. And somehow Mark got a job at Topps in a creative job in product development, had created Garbage Pail Kids with the legendary Art Spiegelman, of all people. Yeah. Pulitzer winner Art Spiegelman. If you ever run into him, ask him about Garbage Pail Kids. But so Garbage Pail Kids was such a big hit that there was Topps was looking for all kinds of similar projects, new things to put out there. And I got a foot in the door as a freelancer. You would go in for 2 days and and they were in Brooklyn. They were in the bowels of Brooklyn in those days, in Red Hook. Right. And you would go there, and it was a building lost in time with the late lunch ladies with hairnets. I mean, it was really, it was like walking into 1958. Wow. In that building, nothing had been updated. Not the outside of the building, not the inside of the building. It was probably asbestos. It was probably a death trap. And I would be paid for 2 days to basically work on whatever they threw in front of me, whether it was GPK, which I did. I did wacky packages. Wow. And then eventually Bazooka Joe crossed my path. They were giving Bazooka Joe a makeover and trying to make him, this was ill-advised, trying to hip him up for the 90s. Right. Or late 80s, as I think it was. I graduated in 84.
I think the asbestos, you could taste it in the gum, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, the gum was made somewhere else. I think the gum was the baseball cards were manufactured in Duryea, Pennsylvania. Wow. I think I have this right. If Gary Girani, if you're listening, you can call in and correct me, or any trading card historian. I believe we just did the writing. We just did the creativity in Brooklyn. I don't think anything was there was no manufacturing plant.
Do you remember any of the jokes? Can you give me your favorite?
I can't give you a Bazooka Joe. I wish you would have prepped me. I would have dug one out of the box. I was proud of some of the wacky packages. I did a Mr. Coffee filter parody called Mr. Coffin.
Oh, nice, yeah.
I did one we never produced because we were afraid that Disney was going to sue. Did a parody of a VHS. It was a VHS box. Was the sticker. Yeah. Was the illustration for the Little Mermaid, and mine was the Little Barmaid. And she was sitting at a bar getting sloshed with the other characters. I did a bunch of those.
I'd go see that. I think that's
so would I.
Yeah.
I did a bunch of those. I can't remember the other wacky packs I did. I did a bunch. I did Peter Panhandle, which was a guy living on Skid Row. Right. That's politically insensitive now that I look back on it. There was
everything is. Don't worry.
I think I did. Oh God, I'm trying to remember them. You could go to my website, comedywise.com, which is a site that is not maintained at all, but some of them are up there if you're that curious. I never put the Bazooka Joe. I didn't really have a lot of ownership about those Bazooka Joe gags that they came and went. Well, I was a kid, I was happy to have the work.
I bet. And if you do go to your site, there's your caricature by Drew Friedman there, and yes. To me that is like the ultimate. It's the highest compliment since Mort Drucker has passed away. Yes. What better homage than a Drew Friedman caricature? That's outstanding, right?
Well, Drew is a genius, and one of my great honors. Yeah. was to be immortalized by Drew. Still is. But those were fun days too. That's before that was right out of college and before I ever left for Los Angeles. But I was feeling my way along, Bill. I thought, well, can I make a living as a humor writer? Is this a job? Is this right? What's in writing Wacky Packs and writing Bazooka Joe comics was not a career. It was a freelance job.
It's a hell of a credit, though. And
it's fun because I meet people in the industry, and that's all they want to talk. They see that on my, I've met writers at the David Letterman show on the picket line during the recent strike, and I want to talk about Letterman. I just want to pick their brains about top 10 lists and stupid pet tricks and all these things that I love, and they want to talk about Wacky Packs and Bazooka Joe comics. So I guess that's a weird claim to fame. I'll take it.
Well, how do you go then from Bazooka Joe to your writing comedy material for? You have a list here: Bill Murray, Howard Stern, Sarah Silverman, Meryl Streep, Martin Short, Ben Stiller, Nathan Lane. Yeah. Nobody I've ever heard of, but and the Boston Red Sox, which is a pretty funny gag at the end of that.
Yeah, that is the life of a freelance joke writer and a freelance gag writer, which is you while you're cobbling together a living, and you're basically taking piecemeal work as it comes. Most of those were on award shows, or for specials, or when people would appear on The View, and I would write little backstage bits for them. The Marty Short thing was great guy, by the way. Yeah, your fellow Canadian.
Very proud of him for sure. Yeah,
one of the loveliest people I've met in the business.
Yeah, and they're all so smart on SCTV, right? Oh. You featured them on your show.
I got to know Dave very well. I know you know Dave.
Dave is the smartest man I know.
I adore him. I adore him.
You could do a podcast on any subject for an hour, for 2 hours. He would know more than you or anyone else.
Especially the JFK assassination.
Oh, my God. or Star Trek.
Get him going on either one of those. Yeah. He's one of my favorite people, and that was a great gift that came through the Amazing Colossal podcast. I got to know Andrea just a little bit. Don't know her well, but Marty was on. I wrote for a show called the Mark Twain Prize at the Kennedy Center.
Oh yeah, of course.
Which is where they give the annual, and they were saluting Carol Burnett.
Wow!
And so I got the job again. Freelance job. You work for 4 days. So they flew me down to D.C. and put me up, and I got to write for Marty and Maya Rudolph and meet Carol and hang out at the bar all night with the legendary George Schlatter of Laugh.
Oh yes, another great guest. Yeah.
Yeah, these are dream experiences, but the ones you ask about, each one of those, Sarah, I wrote a little bit. Yeah, that was a little bit when she was on The View. Did you mention Meryl Streep?
Well, this is what I want to know. Do you write a joke? Do you approach it? If you got Howard Stern and Meryl Streep, what is the equal sign there? Is it a completely different process, or is just a joke a joke?
Well, a joke is a joke depending on who you're writing for. I became adept over the years at writing in different people's voices.
Wow, that's a talent.
The Meryl Streep thing was an award show. I was contacted by a company called Overland Productions, and they were doing this thing called the Good Housekeeping Awards, which is a sponsored award show, which is a reason to rent out Radio City Music Hall and put a bunch of celebrities on the stage, Gwyneth Paltrow, Goldie Hawn, Meryl Streep in this case, and the show needs a writer. And so I would come in. It's a 2-week job. You come in for a week, you write the whole show. You write the boilerplate copy, you write any individual jokes that the presenters want, and then you go and you're backstage, and suddenly you're interacting with Goldie Hawn and Meryl Streep, and you're going over the material with them. And it's a weird kind of experience because you're in this bubble for those 2 weeks where you're interacting with these icons, and you put on the show, and the show ends, and it's over. And you go outside and you walk out onto the sidewalk and you say, did that just happen? And that happened to me a lot. Bill Murray was the Writers Guild Awards, which I was asked to write by the legendary Saturday Night Live writer Herb Sargent.
Wow.
Who became a bit of a mentor of mine and another great man. And I wrote an entire award show and all the copy for people like Andy Rooney and Dan Rather and even John McCain, who was on that show.
Wow.
And the host was Richard Belzer, and I wrote an entire monologue and presenter material for each time he came up. host material for each time he came back to the stage.
Let me stop you there just about Belzer, because I had only on one occasion I met him. I actually went to the comedy, not the Comedy Store, the Improv, I think, in Los Angeles, and he was right when you entered. He was there in the doorway talking to a buddy. I was, nobody from Toronto, and he could not have been friendlier. Like, no. It just seemed like a really genuinely nice guy.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
He certainly was. He was one of the edgiest performers ever.
Yeah,
and he certainly had that edge. And I approached him with great caution.
Yeah,
the first couple of times, but we got to know each other, and we finally became friendly. And I had great admiration for the man. Mm-hmm. He was on our old show.
Yeah,
a handful of times. Anyway, he fell out of that award show at the last minute. And Bill Murray did a favor to Herb because they were old SNL cronies.
Wow.
And so I found myself suddenly sitting at the bar at the Pierre Hotel with the legendary Herb Sargent, who was the writer on That Was the Week That Was.
Yeah.
And I mean wrote for JFK. So and I was a mostly out of work joke writer, sitting at the bar with these two guys, and my career has been full of these odd pinch me moments. You get caught up in, well, what am I doing here? And at the night of the award show, I'm sitting at a table with Dan Rather and Andy Rooney and Bill and Herb and John McCain and Kurt Vonnegut.
Oh my God! And
it's an out of body experience to be talking to these people.
And so it goes.
And so James Lipton was there.
Wow.
And I was the writer. I was the only writer for the evening. So I was I certainly belonged at that table. But it will test your self-confidence and your sense of self. Your sense of do I belong at this table? If my parents, who didn't even graduate from high school, could see me here.
Yeah, well, you absolutely belong to the table. It comes across on the Gilbert Gottfried podcast and your own. Your job on the Gottfried one was as quarterback, basically. I mean, Gilbert was like this crazy, perfect comedy button, but you had to make this thing get from point A to point B. And what was impressive was that you would, almost like Popeye, you would come out with under your breath a zinger that was, wow, really original and funny. And that's what was happening. It was a great part of the show. So,
well, thank you. I tried not to compete with him because that's a fool's errand. but I got more relaxed as we went. And also my role changed as we went. When Dara first approached me with the idea, I thought, okay, well, you're the second banana. So do as a second banana does. Don't try to steal. Ed is not stealing Johnny's spotlight, and he's not trying to prove how funny he is.
Right.
You're there you're really there in service to the star of the show. But it became apparent to me, and again, this is a confidence issue as well. I'll be brutally honest with you, Bill. I did not spend a lot of time on a mic. I was a behind the scenes guy. And I was a ghostwriter, not just a behind-the-scenes guy, but an invisible guy. Most of those credits that I'm telling you about, those gigs that I'm telling you about, it doesn't flash Frank Santopadre on the screen. It's somebody else doing the material, getting the credit for the material, and that was fine with me. I was fine being a guy in the wings, being a guy in the shadows. Now somebody's putting a mic in front of me. And here you are. And here's Gilbert Gottfried and Dick Cavett. And here's Gilbert Gottfried and Bob Saget. What do you got?
Yeah.
And so you're trying to find your way. And I thought, first couple of shows, Saget, Weird Al, Penn Jillette, intimidating people.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, know your place. Speak when spoken to. Do your George Fenneman. Set up Groucho. Set up what you have to set up, chime in when you have something. But the funniest thing happened. Gilbert, after about 7 or 8 episodes, revealed himself to be the host who could not host.
That's right.
He didn't have the take charge personality to do it.
Yeah.
He didn't have the preparation to do it. It became apparent that he wasn't going to prepare. And so he started looking at me. I was the guy that would sit at the table with 10 cards in front of me. And he had 4 4 scribbles on the back of a bus ticket.
And of those scribbles, there was Milton Berle.
Yeah.
And there was Cesar Romero.
They're all the greatest hits.
Right.
I don't want to diminish in any way his talent, his contribution, what he brought to the show. And I enjoy the shows where it's 80% him and 20% me as much as anything that I go back and listen to. He was my comedy hero.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to get in the way at all, and I was thrilled to be his George Fenneman.
But Frank, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say the less he hosted, he had about 20 minutes of hosting in him. The problem is it was a 90-minute show.
Right.
So when Oscar winner Lee Grant is sitting there in her apartment holding her Oscar and staring at you, and you could see Gilbert's completely run out of gas. It's the car. It's the cartoon where the car is sputtering. Right. And you hear the sound effect of the gas tank emptying. Somebody has to ask questions or. It became awkward, and you don't want to just, okay, now I'm taking over. It wasn't anything that obvious. It was that I had to kind of fill the gaps, and gradually, I don't want to say we reversed roles, but gradually I kind of became to use your word, the good term, the quarterback.
Yeah,
and he was the star. He was the star wide receiver. He was and running back.
You did it all with kid gloves, and what was interesting, I think, Frank, and I think you would agree. You have somebody like Dick Cavett, one of the smartest minds there is.
Yeah, the best.
But the first time you make him laugh, then you're in, right? Like, isn't that sort of a changing part of it, right?
Well, it happens so many times.
Yeah.
I mean, I look. It's the greatest experience of my life. I'm sure it always will be, even going forward. Making any of those people laugh, you could really freeze up. You'd be sitting in a room with Dick and Gilbert. I remember sitting in a room with Gilbert and the great comedian Stephen Wright.
Oh my God! Yeah,
and two of them were trading jokes back and forth, and I had again one of those experiences where you're outside of your body looking at yourself, or on the other side of the glass looking at you with the engineer. Yeah. And I thought, what the hell am I doing? I'm a kid from Queens. My parents had no formal education. I went to art school. I didn't get a what anybody would consider a classic education or a formal education in college. I did graduate happily, and I've done fine for myself. Yeah. But what am I doing sitting here with two of the greatest comic minds of the 20th century, and trying to make them laugh is not something that pops into your head right away because you're too busy being in awe. Over the course of 600 shows, I got more comfortable. I got to know these people. I got to know Saget. I got to know Al Yankovic, and so many of the other people that came on the show. And so I gradually started to get a little bit more comfortable on the mic and a little bit more comfortable throwing jokes out there. Certainly in the shows that I did with Gilbert, the mini episodes, where it was just me and Gil. Yeah. And those were less intimidating because there wasn't another person sitting there staring at you saying, who is this guy? And I we didn't have to service the guest. I didn't have to be, I didn't have to be working that hard. Right. So if you listen to those shows, the mini episodes were just Gilbert and I kicking around a topic. Those are much more informal and I'm much more relaxed because that's me. That's sort of me and Gilbert at his kitchen table just cutting up.
Well, clearly when the moment came, you had the chops, and that came through, and that was
thank you.
Part of the show. Please don't go away. Frank will be right back.
Here on the Mountain of Entertainment, we take crime off the streets and bring it right into your living room. We're throwing the book at boredom with every episode of Matlock, Watson, Elsbeth, and the biggest crime lineup you've ever seen. You have the right to remain entertained.
Stream Paramount Plus from $6.99 a month.
You gonna need backup here?
Paramount Plus. Well, time once again to check in on Hollywood Suite with our pal, Emily Gagne. Emily, what's new?
Well, Bill, are you ready to face the music?
Yes, I am, Emily. What do you got?
Well, we've got September soundtracks, so iconic films with great soundtracks from throughout film history. You know, stuff like Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, The Judy Garland A Star Is Born, or if you're into more modern stuff, Sign of the Times from Prince. We even have Notorious, the film about the Notorious B.I.G.
Wow, that's pretty cool. What else you got?
We also have, and I'm very excited to share this, an Oasis documentary from 2005. If you have been following the Oasis news cycle, they're touring again. It's really hard to get tickets, so why not just watch their show from the comfort of your own couch?
Well, there you have it. Consider Hollywood Suite an oasis of great music all this month. Right, Emily?
Right, Bill.
And we are back. A lot of those episodes I really loved wasn't somebody you expected that would just knock you over with comedy. You would have the master of the Hollywood Squares on.
Peter Marshall.
My God, what a great episode. All those stories about the great Al Jolson was a guy who was on the phone, got him a job as a page at a theater, and that's how it all started. Yeah, like it was just, you couldn't believe the stories coming out. Just stories about Bing Crosby pulling off the side of the road and helping some old lady. I don't even know the context of that one.
Oh, was that Bill Persky's story about Bing Crosby ringing the doorbell?
Yes,
on Christmas Eve or
yes.
New Year's Eve. Yeah, I'm trying to piece that story together. That's a beautiful story.
He was going to a party and he got lost, and he went to this lady's house, and it was just the sweetest thing. And then I think we followed up with gifts over the years to this woman, but
great story,
really sweet stuff.
You know, Bill, we stumbled into that. When Dara called me and she said, "What about a podcast?" And podcasting, I think, was pretty still a nascent medium, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Gilbert certainly had no idea what a podcast was. He didn't to the end. To the end. No. But we thought, well, what is this? I mean, what are we going to do? Okay, we'll sit. We just thought, okay, we'll sit and we'll laugh with Saget and we'll tell stories and they'll trade quips, and this whole thing where it kind of morphed into an oral history of show business.
Yeah,
was a happy accident. When we realized we had access to Norman Lear and Dick Van Dyke and Dick Cavett and Carl Reiner, Lee Grant and Peter Bogdanovich and all of these people, when we realized we could get them. Then I realized, well, this isn't just a goof. This is something now I actually have a responsibility. I felt like I went from a sidekick on a show that was about clowning to suddenly I felt like I was Robert Osborne or someone, where I was tasked with, and I was an amateur historian. I knew a lot. But I thought, well, if I'm going to sit down with Lee Grant or Peter Bogdanovich for 90 minutes, first of all, you don't want to be exposed. I already had to kind of prove why I was in the room, because when somebody got booked, when Dara or our friend Gino Salamone, who was doing a lot of the booking, would you like to be on the Gilbert Gottfried show? I don't think these guests were approached, would you like to be on the Gilbert and Frank show? In fact, I know for a fact they weren't. Would you like to be on my husband's podcast? Oh, I love Gilbert Gottfried. I'll just tell me what time to be there. And they'd walk in the room, and who's this other schmuck that's sitting there on the mic staring at me? Is he the producer? Is he this co-host, this person I never heard of? So I already felt a little bit insecure about having to earn my keep week to week.
But as you mentioned, you became a curator. Really, right? Among other things.
It suited me. I'm very thrilled about that. It suited me when I realized I had this responsibility. I just thought Gilbert could get the best out of Peter Bogdanovich comedy-wise. He could make him laugh. They could trade impressions. Gilbert could bring a ton to the table. But what he wasn't going to do, he wasn't going to really do the deep research. He wasn't going to... He wasn't going to do the homework.
No.
He wasn't going to know that Bogdanovich had this experience with Orson Welles or this experience with John Ford. And to get the best out of Peter, and I'm just using him as an example, but to get the best out of the guest, somebody had to do the homework. Somebody had to do the digging and find their best stories, how to set them up.
Yeah.
Somebody had to build the structure of the show.
Absolutely. And that was you. And it was done really well.
Because you don't want to miss it. You don't want to sit there with Peter Bogdanovich, and you cannot sit there with a man who has 12 memoirs worth of stories and then wing it. It's a mistake.
There's nothing worse afterwards than you're thinking of the 12 things you meant to ask. You're right. So we both have spoken with Malcolm McDowell and one of the great storytellers.
One of the best.
And in talking to him the last time, he shoots a show out in the east coast of Canada, Son of a Critch, and he plays Pops, and he's just a lovely gentleman. But he had nothing but praise for your show and doing it
that's
because
great to hear.
He had recently done another podcast with a comedian and was very disappointed in how it turned out. What he remembered and Gilbert in particular, he was surprised at his knowledge of Hollywood movie lore, about just how, we were joking about how Gilbert didn't really do his homework or remember things, but he was surprising sometimes how plugged in he was to the essence of an old movie or a show, right?
It was a week-to-week proposition with Gilbert. If he was excited by the guest and he knew enough about the guest, he could drive the show. And I would happily move into the passenger seat. Or the back seat. And if it was someone he knew and had history with, if it was somebody like Malcolm McDowell and he was acquainted enough with the work, he could. And listen, Gilbert was a historian too. He, as you just touched upon, he certainly knew movies and Hollywood history and theme songs, and he knew a ton that I didn't know.
Yeah, no, right.
It was more about his personality. He was a shy person who was not comfortable taking hold of that mic and saying, "Okay, Malcolm McDowell, you're on my show. Let's go." He didn't have a Mark Maron, or Penn Jillette, or a Conan O'Brien kind of personality. He was not a type. He was not, despite what you see in the performer side of him, he was not a Type A personality. It wasn't his lack of knowledge. Well, there was a little laziness, but it was that he had trouble taking charge. If that makes any sense.
Sure. No, and you understand that, but that's why you guys are a perfect team. It really worked.
I thought,
out.
It turned out that way. And again, that too was a happy accident. I didn't know how it was going to work. I thought, well, maybe we do 10 of these and it was fun.
Wow.
By the time we got to Malcolm McDowell, which was a pandemic episode done over Zoom, I'd have loved to have been in the room with him. That was maybe show 500 and change by that point. Yeah. And so we were it was really down to pretty much a science at that point. And but again, research. He had Caligula stories.
Yes. Yeah.
You could easily sit at the computer, go on YouTube, look up previous interviews with Malcolm McDowell, and find, okay, he's got this great Gielgud story. He's got this great Helen Mirren story.
Oh, yeah.
The Danny K. Laurence Olivier legendary story we already knew about. I saw him tell that on the Joy Behar show live, which was one of the thrills of my career. So, and I'll use this example. Gabe Kaplan was on another podcast and then was on our show. And he called me and he said, night and day. He said, I did that show. The guests did not know a lot of things about me and did not know how to set me up. But I did 4 days of research on Gabe, and I also had pre-interviews with him on the phone.
Wow.
He'd already told me 4 or 5 great stories, so I knew exactly how to get to them and how to build them into the structure of the show organically so that I wasn't doing anything as clumsy as saying, Gabe, tell us this story now.
Right. No. You have to have that in your pocket, and it is an art. Yes, and with McDowell, you can just say Sean Connery or Peter O'Toole or Michael Caine, and then go get a coffee or go to the fridge.
Of course, he's like Cavett. He's like Cavett. Is the self-interviewing guest.
Not everybody
leave for 2 hours.
Exactly. I want to talk after. Sadly, Gilbert passed away, and Was that his health had been deteriorating? Was it a shock at the time? Was it unexpected when he passed away?
It was not unexpected.
Right.
And I had approached him and Dara numerous times in the last year, saying, "Do you want to stop? I know this is potentially burdensome to him, and I know he doesn't feel well. And do you want to call it a day and wrap this up?" And she said, "No, he looks forward to it. It's the highlight of his week."
Yeah, great.
And then I was doing more work as he became more compromised. But again, it was a gift. The show, I guess it sounds corny when I say this in some ways, but the show, looking back on it, and I had a lot of perspective after it ended. Yeah. And I had 3 years of not doing a podcast to reflect on it. It was a gift. It was a gift to me, certainly, to be there with my comedy hero. And it was a gift to, I think, to the guests. I certainly tried to make it a gift to the guests. I felt like this is a Valentine to you, sir or ma'am, and your career, and that's why we're here, is to pay tribute to everything, and thank you for everything you've given us. It was certainly a gift to the fans.
It was, and it's like, when you go and look for the pioneers of television, the YouTube, they have all of the access to these great titans of television and their stories, Carl Reiner, whoever. This is what you created, this vault of knowledge, of institutional knowledge about this in an era when we don't have that, but there it is, and we can all access it. So thank you. Well, that brings us to the end of part 1 of my conversation with Frank Santopadre. Next episode, we'll hear about life after Gilbert, the creation of the new podcast, Fun for All Ages, and how that theme of the new podcast was sort of spun off from, a desire to book a member of Metallica. I kid you not. My thanks once again to Frank Santopadre for being so generous with his time, considering he has a very busy podcast schedule himself. If you haven't already, give Fun for All Ages a listen. You'll find great guests and topics you too can relate to, be it serial or SCTV or Charlie Brown or horror films, so many other pop culture topics. They're all among my favorites. I want to thank my team here at Brio TV, the podcast, and that is Phil Hong. He is my ever-valuable one-man podcast machine. Speaking of cereal, kudos as always to the Crispy Critters, including BJ Del Conte, Paul Boudra, and piano man Stephen Dudley for the music heard on this podcast. Finally, thanks to you, listener. If you like what you heard, please spread the word. I'm Bill Brio. Thanks for listening.